Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Hi, this is Seth Weisberg, partial owner and CEO of ABCO Systems for New Warehouse. And my number one safety pick would be to use wire decks for all pallet rack. I think that wire decks add an extreme amount of value because it gives the fork truck drivers a lot of confidence going in and out. And so it adds efficiency while at the same time ensuring that any bad pallets or anything that might not be placed perfect onto the pallet rack is still safe and no issues ensue.
Fulfillment demand continues to skyrocket and outpace available labor. To keep up, warehouse operators are turning to flexible fulfillment solutions like 6 River Systems. Utilizing 6 River Systems' award-winning combination of collaborative robots, artificial intelligence, and operational expertise will make your associates and wall-to-wall fulfillment workflow more efficient. No new infrastructure, no change to warehouse layout, easy to deploy and scale, easy to train and retain associates, all at half the cost of traditional automation. Want to take your fulfillment operation to the next level? Go to www.6river.com to learn more. That's www.6river.com to learn more.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. On today's episode, I will be joined by Seth Weisberg. He is owner and CEO at ABCO Systems. ABCO Systems deals with all kinds of solutions for the warehouse, especially racking. I have personal experience in my professional career utilizing them for racking projects as well. So Seth is going to come on. He's going to talk to us about ABCO, what it is they do. They've been growing a lot from what I can see on LinkedIn and things of that nature. And actually one of our former guests has also joined ABCO as well, and they've really been pushing full steam, it seems, to expand their footprint, and that's really a great thing because they do great work. So he's going to tell us a little bit about ABCO, everything they do, and then we're going to talk about racking, which actually, surprisingly, is something that we have not focused on the podcast yet. So, Seth, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, doing well, Kevin. Thank you very much. Appreciate being here.
Yeah, happy to have you on. And, as I mentioned, you've done some things together with ABCO in the past and my other career here. So it's good to actually have you on and talk to you. So why don't you tell us exactly what it is ABCO does and tell us about the company itself.
Okay, thank you. So ABCO Systems is a design, build, warehouse distribution, construction company. We think of ourselves a little bit different than most companies out there. We're a full service company. We provide full service turnkey solutions. However, we take it a little bit further. Many years ago, while dealing with the permit application process, we realized that if we were to handle every bit of it, it would help the customer immensely because we were handling a lot of the project management. And any kind of permit requires fire protection, egress, and lighting as well. So we started to stylize ourselves really as a GC for the material handling world. The beauty behind that was based on our culture of customer service. Our focus wasn't making money off of GC style of doing work. Okay. It was really providing the most service we possibly could for our customer base. So we would bring in different fire protection vendors. We pretty much settled on one because they're so good. But we work with a number of different ones, and it's always good to diversify, of course. And we bring in a number of different electricians. Of course, we've got our favorites there as well. But ultimately, we bring these people in. They give good pricing to the customer. They give pricing direct to the customer. And because they're working with me multiple times a year, sometimes a dozen, 2 dozen even, they're giving better customer service, they're giving better pricing, and they're just giving greater consideration to the end user and to us. So it helps the end user because they're getting the project management, they're getting the best pricing possible. And it helps us because it helps us to stay busy. It helps us to keep our levels of customer service extremely high. Helps keep us busy, which is all we're really looking for. And it helps our vendors. So it's really become a win-win for us. And I think that's one of the reasons we've grown the way we have. It's never been about big projects and big money. It's always been about doing the right thing by the customer and staying busy. So most of our work, and I think the vast majority of the reason for our growth is because we're just getting a lot of repeat business and continuing to get a lot of referrals.
Okay, yeah, interesting, and I can testify. I mean, you guys do a good job on pricing as compared to others in the market as well. So, it's really interesting the concept there. You talk about creating this full suite, basically providing all the different components necessary for the project. And managing that. So I'm curious, from your background that I can see on LinkedIn, I mean, it doesn't seem like you necessarily had background in kind of the racking and construction world like this. So I'm curious, how did ABCO get started, and how did this idea come about to do this?
So that's interesting. No, I don't really have a background in this.
Yeah.
So it was my father's business. In fact, it was my grandfather's business before him. And it's evolved over the years significantly, which of course I'm happy to get into. But when I graduated from school, I did work with my father for about 10 months. Okay. Typical family business type of problems. At the time, my great uncle and my cousin were here. There was just natural challenges of working with the family, and I wasn't happy. And it just wasn't the environment I necessarily wanted to be in. So my father, being a great parent, supported my decision to leave. I ended up going back to school for technology and for computers, simply because that was when the whole PC boom was happening. Literally took one night class while I was still working at ABCO. Got a great job. A year later, got a better job at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Stayed there for 6 years, working in their technology department. Really was doing a lot of internal project management. Really enjoyed myself immensely, and I guess right in 2003, my father had what we believe to be his 5th heart attack. Yeah, it was tough, and he's good now. Everything's good, but at the time, it was precarious. It was a little touch and go. We were a little bit nervous. We negotiated the rest of the family out. The business wasn't doing overly well. We were relatively slow, smaller, and he needed help. My folks were not in a place where they could retire, and he asked me to come in, and I did. I had no intention of staying. I just figured I would help him get back on his feet and help him get going. And everything kind of seemed to gel. I loved working with my father. We became friends as much as a parent-son relationship. We became great friends, which was wonderful on so many levels. And I started to really enjoy the work, which was the most important piece. So a little bit of new school energy, process and procedure from a big corporation, right? A little bit of technology brought in, mixed in with his experience, his reputation, because he still has a great reputation. He's been retired for well over 10 years now. Mix that all together, and we started to really grow a little bit. And when I say grow, we were stabilizing as much as anything else. And really, I depended on him to be closing the work, which I suppose made sense. But as time went by, I started to take more and more accounts. I started to build more and more accounts. I started to do a lot of cold calling. Started hitting the streets, pounding on doors, building my own relationships, establishing my own network, and things just kind of started to take off from there. He retired, and it was a slow retirement, right? Okay. But he retired in the neighborhood of 10, 11, 12 years ago. And that's really, as luck would have it, when everything kind of took off. But not to get too deep down the rabbit hole, because I'm sure you have other questions. Yeah, came from PricewaterhouseCoopers, was a technology guy for the most part, really project management for the most part, more than tech. Mm. But bigger than that, I was a sociology major in college.
I saw that.
and working with people and understanding people and understanding what people are looking for and what they want was always the biggest priority for me. So, combine the love of sociology and working with people along with a little bit of project management, mix that in with some old school work ethic and experience, and it ended up being a real good match.
Interesting. Yeah. And it's interesting to hear the family dynamic there and kind of the different levels of it. It seems in the beginning you were not so sure about it, and then and obviously now here you are. So it kind of worked out in the end. So I'm curious though, in there, you said that, you kind of brought some technology as well. And, I mentioned the racking portion of it. And, obviously that's what I've dealt with you guys, but,
sure.
You also offer some automation, solutions as well. So I'm curious, did that kind of spur and kind of come to fruition, as you kind of came more on board, bringing that technology background?
Yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate you asking that, actually, and I'll try and be as succinct as possible. But when I came in, I mean, we were a GOH company. We specialized in garment on hanger. Through the 80s, GOH was huge. It was monstrous. There was tons of people doing it, tons of end users needing it. But it dried up in the 90s. Shipping lanes changed, technology changed. And my father, being as good as he was, having as much integrity as he did, and the reputation, the customer base, he held on. And while a lot of GOH people evolved and or died off, he continued to do GOH. But by the time I got into it in the early 2000s, there wasn't much left. There was still some happening. There's still some happening today, and we still do it. But I realized one of the first things when I came in was we needed to diversify our product line. And I wanted to become more of a customer-focused solutions provider rather than someone that you call just for one specific item that you need. So first thing I did was hire an engineer, a little bit of luck, really. Okay. A little bit of luck with that. And he just so happens to be a shockingly brilliant engineer. And he had helped us with our multi-level pick modules that we were starting to do, and he helped us with our GOH, and then we evolved into pallet racking. And really, that same engineer at one point came to me and said, "Listen, I want to be doing more tech." He came from a conveyor background. Okay. Said, "I want to be doing more tech. I want to be doing more conveyor work. That's what's fun for me. How about expanding?" And I said, "Absolutely, let's do it." So we started doing a lot of other different things. We started doing a lot of conveyance, a lot of sortation, packing sortation, receiving sortation, shipping sortation, print and applies. Of course, when you look at e-commerce now, it seems like a no-brainer, right? It seems a little bit of common sense.
Yeah.
But even 7, 8, 9 years ago, e-commerce was happening. It was happening a lot slower. Right. But I remember telling people that, and not that long ago, right? Like 12, 18 months ago, I remember telling people that e-commerce really is 10% of the market. Now, put that in perspective. Any business that changes 10%, that's a big change, right? Yeah. But in the grander scheme of things, 10% of the market going to e-commerce was nothing. It was absolutely nothing. And we started to focus on it, saying, okay, cool, if there's 10% now, imagine what it's going to be in 10 years or 15 years. And then, of course, COVID hit, right? So we were lucky. We were very, very lucky because we were in a good place. We'd already had many years of experience with it. We'd already done dozens of print and applies. We were able to work with customers to weigh their products as it's going through so that they could ship it out. I mean, the various different technologies that we had in place really served us very, very well. And based on the pandemic and based on the huge surge of e-commerce requirements, it's gone very well for us. Now, we're still doing a lot of other things like multi-level pick modules because that was kind of our bread and butter for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's huge in an e-commerce world because you want to create efficiency, while utilizing as much space as possible. So instead of using pallet rack that goes all the way up, if you've got a lot of pick faces and you've got a lot of items, having that pick module with many, many pick faces and the ease of use to be able to get there by walking and using conveyance to get through that pick module, that's always been a big thing for us. So we're continuing to do all sorts of different types of automation right now. And, we haven't done a lot of the heavy duty automation, the ASRS type stuff, and robotics, but we're getting into it. A lot of our customers are coming to us, asking us about it, and they're giving us the opportunity to learn about it with them and do it with them. And it's been an exciting road. And so far, everything that we're focusing on really is specific to relatively inexpensive e-commerce solutions. But every day we're expanding, learning, growing, and that's why we added people like Jack. And that's why we continue looking for new talent to ensure that we are staying fresh. Because one of the things we realized also is that businesses, we realized this a long time ago, is that businesses are made by the people within it. And I can't tell you, even adding Matt, the engineer I was referring to earlier, how much he changed the nature and the ability of this business. So using that as a model, we just continue to look for the best and the brightest out there so that we can continue doing a lot of different things.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a really great philosophy to go by. And I think that calls back to your sociology education, probably, is getting those people together and the right people to be able to help your business grow and expand and adopt to, all the changing technologies as well. You mentioned, a couple different things in there. What I want to kind of talk about racking itself. This is actually, so a warehouse-focused podcast, and we've actually never specifically spoken about racking on the show, surprisingly. So I'm happy to have you on. So I want to talk racking a little bit. So I see on the website you guys have like a calculator and things like that to help you decide, what type of rack you need, how much, but from, I guess, your perspective, how does a company really go about deciding what type of racking they need? And I think the biggest question is probably, how much do they need?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and there's a lot to it. And it's near and dear to my heart, right? Because most companies, and the world has changed. The distribution models changed. The culture around logistics has changed, and largely thanks to Amazon. But people are realizing that distribution centers are not necessarily cost centers. Back in the day, from what I recall, it was put everything in as much as you possibly can, make it as cheap as possible, stuff as much into the box as you possibly can. And it wasn't really looked at as a way to save money, create efficiency, and or take care of the customer. That changed with Bezos. That changed with Amazon. As far as I'm concerned, they really revolutionized the culture as much as anything else. So with pallet racks specifically, there was a number of different ways to do it, of course, but it's even that has evolved. Back in the day, it was just put in the oldest, ugliest, whatever rack you had and make it work. Yeah. Today, specifically to answer your question, I mean, how many pallet positions they have, they should know. Customers will ultimately know whether they've got a need to store 500 pallet positions, 5,000, or 50,000 pallet positions. Right. And then what we can do, knowing how many they need, is we can work with them in their business model. There's V&A, which is very narrow aisles. There's narrow aisles. There's standard type aisles. It depends on what kind of fork truck people want to use. Depends how fast they're moving their product. Oftentimes today you'll have something called a shelf level on the bottom few levels, because you can use those as smaller pick faces where you'll have bulk storage on top. Right. It really depends so much on the type of business that is coming to us looking for assistance. And it depends on their distribution model and depends on where they want to go and how they want to grow. So there's a shocking amount to it, and people are realizing that more than ever today, which is nice. Why I said this was near and dear to my heart, because this happens all the time. people come to us after they find a building, and they say, "Hey, we want to rack it out." I cannot express enough how much I would like to tell everybody in the world, whether they come to us or they go to somebody like us, go before the fact. If it's a good company, similar to us, and you're customer focused, they'll do design work at no cost. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to go in A to Z and look at all their data and do consulting type work, because that's a whole new ballgame, right? But with a little bit of experience and a little bit of effort, you can go and look and see what a building is doing, ask dozens of questions, find out really what their focus is, how they need to do it to best suit their business model. And there's so many different ways that we can provide value. We would prefer to do that beforehand, because I mean, if you need a building that's 100,000 feet instead of 150 or even 130, well, you're saving a significant amount of money.
Right.
If your product can go higher based on the fact that maybe certain pallets don't move very often, well, okay, so then look for a building that's got taller ceilings. How you lay it out with your column spacing, the sprinkler system that's in the building may or may not support the rack and the commodity class and the way it's all laid out. So there's so much to it that we would always prefer somebody come to us beforehand. We can help them design it. We work with a number of different real estate agents. People come to us all the time at this stage, but I dealt with something last week where somebody said, "Hey, listen, I need to be in this building in a month," which is a huge challenge because you have to go through the permit process anyway, and that takes time. But the sprinkler system didn't work for her commodity class.
Oh, wow.
So she was probably looking at about an $80,000 to $100,000 upgrade, which is clearly a huge amount of money. That said, once she signs a lease, she's got no leverage.
Right.
If she has that conversation prior to signing a lease, well, then maybe there's a little bit more leverage. Now, this might be a whole nother topic in the world we're living today, and the fact that there's very few warehouses out in the market right now. There's just not a lot of stock.
Yeah.
Some people might be stuck, and some people might have to make some hard decisions. But a landlord, and I don't blame them for this, is always going to rather an end user upgrade the sprinkler system for them. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen that happen, where after the lease is signed, you can't get permits. So, determining exactly how the racking system, how many pallet positions they need, and how it should be laid out, it's just by a good salesperson that knows the industry, that's been doing it a while. It's by them listening, asking a ton of questions, seeing what they currently have, what they're currently doing, how they're operating, what their goals are for the future, of course, and then working with engineers. We're lucky enough that we now have 3 engineers on staff, plus a couple of designers. Okay. So we do have a lot of experience with it. That's why we created that calculator. As you mentioned, it's on our website. The calculator specifically is so that somebody that might be trying to educate themselves, but they don't necessarily want to make a phone call first, which I understand. I'm a consumer too. Yeah. You go to the calculator and you can put in your information any number of different ways, and it'll either tell you how many pallet positions you can fit in a building, or based on how many pallet positions you have and the aisle spacing you're looking for, what size building you should be going for.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Interesting. Yeah. Really great perspective and insights there. And I'm curious, from your kind of discussion there about, looking at it beforehand or, afterwards, as you mentioned, the person is having the issue with the sprinklers, how many times are you guys going in and kind of correcting basically racking or layouts that were just done because they needed to get into a place too fast and they really didn't think it out? Is that something you guys do often? Yeah.
It happens all the time. So again, the changing culture of pallet rack, right? Mm-hmm. The changing culture of logistics and distribution. And for a long time, it was, okay, let me fill up this building the best way I know how. Let me do whatever I can. And pallet rack in certain ways can be very simple. There's a lot of people that can sell pallet rack and sell different things like that, shelving like that, out of their kitchen. They hire a sub crew. They buy the rack for the end user, and ultimately they put it in. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to disparage that, because for some businesses that might be the best way, and it's certainly going to be the cheapest way. But it happens a couple times a month that people call us and say they were in a rush or they wanted to do it inexpensively, and they're not maximizing the capability of their space and their facility, and they need to make changes, which of course becomes more expensive, but they're realizing because they didn't do it the right way the first time, they're spending more money every single day trying to move product through their facility. So we always prefer people come to us first. And listen, even if we give designs and they don't work with us, that's okay. Yeah. The hope is that we're providing such good levels of customer service so that they keep our name, and or maybe somebody asks them for somebody in the future and they use us in the future, or they refer us in the future. So it's there's still a lot of learning to do in the industry, and the culture still is changing. And coming as a small business guy, I get the hope to save as much money as humanly possible. And for some business models, it's totally okay. But more and more, we're seeing a properly optimized space saves money. Listen, we've got two major factors that cost us money in the world today. One, real estate, super expensive. Two, labor. So if we can create efficiencies through space design and efficiencies through product flow, it's a huge win. Now, ROI has finally become something that people are really understanding. And it took me a long time too, of course, but now I don't mind spending money on things at all if I know that it's going to benefit the company. Right. And people are really starting to get that, which is exciting. And we're seeing a lot of even smaller companies, because we work with people that are in 30,000 square foot facilities all the way up to 300. We've been in buildings that are over 1 million square feet. And everybody is ultimately trying to do the same thing: ship as efficiently and as effectively as possible. And an old mentor of mine told me years ago, said, Seth, if we're shipping 10,000 items a day, and these items cost $2 a piece for me to ship out, but I can save $1 an item a day by optimizing my space, then you just do the math. Yeah. How long does that take to save the money of what you want to put in? And I know that sounds basic, but saving $10,000 a day based on that quick model, it's huge. And that's not unheard of. That can absolutely happen. Yeah. Now, some people are putting in multi-million-dollar systems today, of course, but getting that ROI isn't just about even saving money on the efficiency. It's about taking care of the customer. If you're getting the product out that much faster, listen, today, everybody's competing against Amazon. I don't care what business you're in. Right. In my opinion, everybody's competing against Amazon. And Amazon's even expensive in a number of different ways, but they can be, because I can literally order something right now while I'm on the phone with you, because it's so incredibly easy. And there's a possibility I'll get it tonight. If not, I'll certainly get it tomorrow. Everybody out there today, in my opinion, needs to be thinking how they can take care of the customer. So it's not just saving money on the space, space design and product and flow efficiency, but it's also there's so much in the implied odds of just taking care of the customer and making sure you're getting that repeat business.
Definitely, yeah, and a lot of good points and insights there as well. And I think one thing that really stuck out to me that you said is there is like the initial cost. You're trying to save money, so you're just putting up anything that can work for you that you think works. And especially with a lot of new companies out there and e-commerce companies that have been popping up because of the shift in consumer behavior and demand. It's oftentimes maybe the company is not as educated on the distribution side because they're just coming up with this e-commerce solution that they saw a hole in the market for. So I think, the one thing you said about, there's the cost kind of up front and then there's the cost for maybe the rework of it, but you're not necessarily always thinking about the cost that you're losing day to day because of the inefficiencies. And I think that's a huge point there. And I want to kind of call that out. And, there really is that difference. And as you mentioned, it can be as dramatic as $10,000 a day, which is huge. I mean, that adds up quickly. But any savings there at all, I think in the long term, it's going to help you before it gets too late and you realize that, oh my God, I was losing all this money at this point, and maybe we could have been in a better position or invested that money into something that would have helped us, like you said at the end there, provide better service level to the customer. So really, really good insight there. Now I'm curious, you mentioned there when we just initially started talking about the racking, there's a lot of different variations and types of racking. Is there any type of racking that you're seeing is more popular these days? Like, are more people using more VNA or narrow aisle? How is that?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of VNA with wire guidance.
Okay.
Lot of VNA with wire guidance. It just makes sense if you're trying to get as much product into the building and also work efficiently. Now, it's not going to work for everybody. It depends on what you've got. If you've got full pallets, if you need pick faces, if you need people walking through those aisles, if you're pulling less than pallet, if you're pulling less than carton types of orders, it's not going to work for everybody. But lately, it does appear that we're designing everything to be VNA. There's still a lot of need for bulk storage.
Yeah.
So VNA and maximizing space appears to be one of the most popular ways to go about it today.
Interesting. Yeah. I think that kind of echoes your statement earlier about the shortage on kind of real estate. So people are trying to maximize the space that they can get. So it's really interesting. And I've always been a fan of the wire guided as well from a safety perspective. So it's good to hear too.
Yeah, wire guided is awesome. I mean, A, you've got the safety. B, you're not beating up your rack.
Right.
And back in the day, people used to kick the crap out of their rack. But today, people are realizing that rack holds value pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also something that they've got on their books, and it's something that they can calculate as part of their business model. And I can't tell you how often we're buying rack, and if it's beat up, then obviously, of course, we're giving less money for it. Whereas if it's good looking rack, we're giving good money for it.
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely agree with you. I've been in some older warehouses and seen some precarious looking rack.
Sure, yeah, I bet.
Twisted and beat up. So yeah, definitely a good idea to take care of that. Not only from a safety perspective and overall structural integrity, but also on the resale side as well, like you mentioned, because there is that option. I'm curious with the racking as well. We talked a little bit about automation, but have you seen a shift in the way that racking setups and designs have been laid out due to companies like adopting AMRs and different types of robots that will interact within the racking systems?
Yeah, we just finished a project in California that's being set up for AGVs.
Okay.
Massive project, about $3 million worth of pallet rack in the building as a whole.
Wow.
And their goal, they're operating now off of fork trucks, but their goal is to be using automated fork trucks, AGVs, which is super cool. We're not seeing a ton of that at the moment, but it does appear to be going in that direction. For what it's worth, I'm still very much on the fence of robots in general. I don't see the ROI on it. I think there's some companies out there that can play with this technology because they've got really deep pockets and they can advertise it over years. But what I'm seeing, and for what it's worth, I also have some data on this, and I don't know the exact number, so don't quote me on this just now, but the robots and the sales of robots have gone down, have decreased for 2020.
Interesting.
Now, that could be for a number of different reasons, right? But you would almost think that based on 2020, the need for robots would be increased. And maybe 2021 and 22 will see something different. We'll see. Time will tell. But everything I've looked at is they're extremely difficult to implement. They're extremely expensive. They're a one-use type of system. So they just don't give you the flexibility to do what a lot of the other technologies out there are able to do. You know, you look at something like the Kiva system, super cool. I mean, super cool. And it's been around for a while and has really benefited a number of companies in a great amount of ways. But unless you've got a specific need for that, it's really not that. It's just not that great. I mean, you're basically losing the entire cube that way. And I've seen other ones that are picking out of shelving units, and I've seen some really neat stuff that's picking out of pallet rack even. But I haven't seen any cost justification for it. I've spoken to some people that are way, way smarter than me that don't appear to be able to find an ROI on it just yet. And maybe it'll come. But so far, I personally don't see it. And I'm on the fence as to whether or not it's going to be the next big thing.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting perspective. You know, we've had a lot of robotics companies on the show, and it is sometimes, you know, I guess the solution seems not as flexible, like as you mentioned, and you know, it also the ROI sometimes it's hard to see unless you're kind of a bigger company that has the money, I guess, to, you know, play around and try and experiment with this stuff and implement. But I think it'll be interesting to see how the technology becomes more accessible and more adaptable over time. So in that setup that you mentioned out in California, now when you're looking at the racking, did you have to take into any special consideration of how it was set up? Did you have to set it up differently than you would kind of a normal non-robotic warehouse? Yeah,
it was different. The rack and the storage is a lot deeper. You know, sometimes you'll do double deep or triple deep storage, and this was set up in that fashion. You know, oftentimes, and again, depending on the product, depending on how fast it moves, depending on the amount of SKUs in the building, there's so many different variables. Somebody might use something like pushback or drive-in, but in this specific situation, it's all standard selective rack, and it's just there's triple deep lines, there's 40 blinds. It's designed. It really there were changes specific for the AGVs. We'll see if they end up going in that direction. I don't know if it's definitely going to happen. Right now, they can work with it the way it is because they've got the reach trucks and the double reach trucks. Right. But you know, adding the AGV in will certainly add in accuracy in a lot of ways, safety in a lot of ways. My question, as always, is will the ROI be there? Because it's not inexpensive by any means. Right. And again, a lot of people smarter than me that are justifying those numbers. So for me, that's just a pretty shallow look at so much that's out there right now. Our focus, as much as anything else, has really been the e-commerce, specific to e-commerce solutions, the onesie-twosie items, moving product quickly through a warehouse, picking it quickly. But as we get deeper into this other stuff, I'd love to come back someday if you'd have me, so that we can see where we're at maybe in 6 months or 12 months and see how the world has changed, because it's changing so fast. And you know, you just echoed my sentiment earlier. Flexibility, right? With the world changing as fast as it is, I always advocate flexibility. So even in any system that we're building and designing, I always want to have a mix. I want to have a hybrid of some kind because you never know what's going to happen. And I'm a plan for the worst and hope for the best type of person. So, and hybrid solutions, I love them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the flexibility is key, especially with what we've gone through in the last year, especially on the supply chain side and warehousing side as well. As you need to have the flexibility to be able to adjust and realign things as quickly as you can, especially with some of the challenges with social distancing and things in the warehouse. Being able to be kind of proactive about that and reactive too in a quick way is a good thing. So before we kind of close out our conversation here, I'm curious from your perspective. What you're dealing with warehouse layouts all the time. What do you think the future warehouse layout looks like 5 years from now? What do you think? Do you think there's a dramatic change, or do you think it's still going to be kind of that bread and butter aisle racking type of layout?
I think it's hard to say. So we've put a lot of our focus over the last couple of years into 3PLs.
Okay.
And we're lucky. I'd love to take credit for it. I'd love to say that we were thinking the right ways. We just had a lot of 3PLs that we consistently work with over and over again. Realize that they're constantly changing. It's probably the most difficult environment to plan for. And we had a lot of luck in dealing with 3PLs. So we just started to focus on that and seeing how we can help them that much more. I think going forward, the 3PL model is going to just continue driving the process. Single sale solutions for retailers appear easy right now when you're setting up warehouses for potentially hundreds of different customers. But I think what we're seeing as much as anything else as a whole in the industry, taller ceilings, wider columns, bigger buildings. They're just building these monster buildings all over the place right now. Yeah. And there's a lack of space at the moment. And people are going down south in Jersey to build. People are going to the west. People are going to the middle of the country. I think we're going to see that a lot more. It just appears that everything on the coast is very, very expensive, and it's full. So I think people are trying to find those different solutions. But, I do think that it's going to be just these bigger buildings. I think pick modules are going to be incredibly important. I think you'll see hybrids of pick modules that have those multiple pick faces so you can get the product out. I think we're always going to need a lot of bulk storage because we just don't manufacture anything here in this country, or at least we don't manufacture very many things.
Yeah.
And even if you do manufacture here, it still goes from a manufacturing plant to a warehouse, to some storage facility. So whether it's overseas or domestic, the need for bulk storage is always going to be there. I think what we just went through and what we continue to go through is going to exacerbate and or highlight the need that we really do require a lot of bulk storage for many different reasons. But because everything is going omni-channel, I think you're going to see a lot of conveyance bringing things through buildings because labor's going up, B, real estate's not getting any cheaper, and you certainly can't get that much more of it. So I think you're going to see a lot of conveyance, a lot of automated movement through the buildings. I think you're going to see a lot of multi-level modules to take advantage of the height, and I think you're going to see a lot of bulk storage. So my guess is it's going to be, again, similar to what I'd mentioned earlier, a hybrid solution for everything, and just in much larger buildings. And I really do think that 3PLs are going to be taking over everything.
Interesting. Yeah. I think so too. I think especially like as I mentioned earlier, the kind of the upstart e-commerce businesses and things of that nature that might not necessarily have the distribution background. 3PL is going to be key for them really to scale. So really interesting insight there, and I'm happy to hear from you in terms of what you think the current state is, and then also future state as well. So, and we'll definitely have to do that check-in that you mentioned to see how things keep progressing overall in the industry. Seth, I want to thank you for coming on the show today and talking to me. How can people find out more information about ABCO Systems?
You can go to our website, which is abcosystems.net. I'm fully engaged and fully active in my role, and I encourage people to call me. So people can always call my cell phone at 212-242-7514. You can also call the office at 201-507-0999. Listen, I can't thank you enough. This was really great. I'm excited to be on this podcast with you. And if you're ever looking for somebody to come back, I'd love to join you.
Definitely. Thanks so much for your time.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.